Welcome to this explainer. Look, let's start with a hard truth. Why is it that some organizations or even just individuals can totally weather a massive public crisis while others absolutely crumble at the very first sign of doubt? We always talk about trust like it's magic, right? Like it's some abstract, warm, fuzzy feeling that you either magically have or you don't. But what if we're looking at it completely wrong? Today, we are unpacking a highly concentrated learning module that totally flips this paradigm on its head. We're diving deep into the delicate, almost architectural balance between building trust and navigating skepticism. Because here's the thing, trust isn't an emotion, it's an architecture. And if you've ever wondered how trust is actually constructed, and more importantly, how it's deconstructed in the real world, well, you are in exactly the right place. Our roadmap for today is pretty straightforward. We'll be walking through the language of trust, symbols and communicated messages, the architecture of skepticism, its impact on our operations, and finally, implications for communication. Let's get right into it.
So, part one, the language of trust. This is basically our foundational curriculum.
We're laying the groundwork here with what the source module explicitly calls a necessary new framework. The crucial takeaway is that trust actually has a specific new language that we literally have to learn to speak and understand. Think about it like traveling to a foreign country. If you don't speak the local language, you can't just shout your native tongue louder and expect people to suddenly get it, right? You have to learn their vocabulary. You have to learn their grammar. Well, trust operates the exact same way. It's a structured system of communication. If you're out there trying to earn the public's trust, but you aren't using the right structural communication system, honestly, your intentions just don't matter. The message simply will not land.
And this curriculum is built on a really specific two-step progression. First up, step one. We have to build the foundation by mastering what are called symbols and the communicated message. That's the construction phase. But you can't just stop there. Only after that can we move to step two, which is actively testing that foundation against the fierce winds of skepticism to really learn its impact on operations and communication. It's a strict sequential process. You can't just skip step one and expect step two to make any sense because, well, you can't test a building that hasn't been built yet.
All right, moving right along into part two, symbols and communicated messages. These are our building blocks.
In this module, participants first grapple with this concept of symbols. Now, I want you to think of these symbols as the raw structural materials we use to actually signal our intent. Just like bricks or mortar or steel in a physical building, symbols are the fundamental units we stack together to establish trust. So, what does a symbol actually look like in the real world? It is definitely not just a slick logo. A true symbol of trust might be a rigorous, completely independent third-party security audit. It could be a verified badge confirming your identity. It might be a transparent, deeply detailed supply chain report showing exactly, and I mean exactly, where your materials come from. Or it might even be the specific words a leader uses to take extreme accountability during a crisis, instead of just passing the buck. These are concrete actions. They are tangible artifacts. They're your bricks. And without strong, undeniable symbols, anything you try to build on top of them is eventually going to collapse.
Once those foundational symbols are fully understood and really mastered, they get framed into what the module calls the communicated message. If a symbol is a single brick, the communicated message is the entire completed fortress. This is the finished structure that we actively project outwards to the rest of the world. You take your symbols, let's say a decade-long history of absolutely zero data breaches, some highly visible industry credentials, maybe a policy of total open-door communication, and you arrange them with real purpose. You mortar them together. That cohesive structure becomes the actual message you deliver to your audience. So the message isn't just what you're saying, it is the sum total of all the symbols you've successfully put together.
Which brings us to part three, the architecture of skepticism. This is where we face the ultimate structural challenge. Because as we all know, our messages do not exist in a vacuum. We face this incredible tension. On one side, we have our carefully constructed, communicated message, the thing we project out into the world with the absolute best of intentions. But on the other side, we have skepticism. And here's where the paradigm truly, completely shifts. Skepticism isn't framed here as just a passing doubt or some fleeting emotion from a couple of loud critics online. No, it is a permanent, structural force in the real world. Think of it literally like gravity, or like relentless wind and rain constantly beating against that building you just constructed. It is the inescapable environment that receives and inevitably impacts every single message you send out there. And this leads us directly to a truly pivotal question posed in the curriculum. What is the impact of skepticism on how we actually operate? This right here is a massive aha moment for participants. It represents the gap between theory, what we desperately want to say, and reality, how it is actually received by a deeply skeptical public. It pulls us out of the nice, neat theoretical realm of just arranging symbols and forces us to face the harsh operational reality of the world we're actually living in.
Let's jump into part 4, impact on our operations, how skepticism changes our actions.
The source text marks this crucial pivot super clearly, stating that participants then transition to learning the impact of skepticism on how we operate. Understanding symbols and crafting messages, that's really only the very first phase. Honestly, that's the easy part. The true test of the module, and of literally any organization, is realizing that understanding communication just isn't enough. We have to understand how the very presence of structural skepticism fundamentally alters our day-to-day operations. Moving from just communicating to actually operating differently is incredibly hard, because it demands that we change what we do, not just what we say.
This brings us to a core philosophy of the whole explainer. Skepticism shapes how we operate. If skepticism is a permanent feature of the landscape, then our businesses and our individual actions have to fundamentally change just to survive it. Let's look at what this actually means operationally. Imagine you're running a tech company and you know the public is deeply, profoundly skeptical about data privacy. Under the old model, you might just run a slick marketing campaign saying, "Hey, we care about your privacy." But that's just a message. If you accept skepticism as an architecture, you don't just say you're private, you fundamentally change your operations. You build end-to-end open source encryption, you hire external adversarial auditors to try and break your systems, and then you publish their findings for the whole world to see. You restructure your data storage so even you cannot read user messages. Because the skepticism is always there, you have to design your actual operations to withstand it. Your actions literally become your strongest symbols.
Finally, we arrive at part 5, implications for communication. This is the final synthesis.
Everything we've learned so far leads us directly to this ultimate implication. We start with those raw foundational concepts, the symbols and the communicated message. But we have to immediately adapt them because we know we are communicating under a constant, unforgiving umbrella of skepticism. We start with theory and we end with profound, real-world adaptation. The implication here is that we have to change exactly how we share information before we even open our mouths. We've got to anticipate the resistance, preempt the doubt with rock-solid operational proof, and ensure that every single message we project is structurally reinforced to survive contact with a highly skeptical reality. Knowing all of this, I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to chew on. Ask yourself, what are the implications of how you communicate within the architecture of skepticism? Look really closely at your own life or your own organization. Are your symbols actually strong enough, or are they a bit hollow? Is your message built with real operational backing to withstand the elements, or is it going to collapse under the very first wave of public doubt? Keep building, keep adapting, and make absolutely sure your structure of trust is built to last. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive.